There is a coastline in the west of Ireland where the land itself seems to defy the sea. Great dark cliffs stand against the endless assault of the Atlantic, and the water is a cold, churning gray, even on the clearest of days. This is a world of wind and rock, a place where survival has always demanded a particular kind of strength, a fierce and unyielding resilience. For centuries, the people who clung to this edge of the world lived by their own rules, their lives governed by the ancient rhythms of the clans, their fortunes rising and falling with the tides. And it was here, in this wild and unforgiving landscape in the turbulent 16th century, that a legend was born, not a king in a castle but a queen on the deck of a ship. Her name was Grace O'Malley, but in the Gaelic tongue of her people she was Granuaile, a name that would come to echo with the thunder of cannon fire and the whisper of secret diplomacy. She was a chieftain, a mother, a widow, a pirate, and a shrewd political operator who would eventually stare down the most powerful monarch in the world and demand to be treated as an equal. This is the story of the pirate queen of Connaught, a woman who carved out a kingdom of the waves and defied an empire, only to be nearly erased by the very history she helped to shape. To understand Grace O'Malley, one must first understand the Ireland of her time, a nation fractured and poised on the brink of catastrophe. The year of her birth, around 1530, was a moment of precarious balance. The English crown under the Tudor dynasty had for decades been attempting to exert its control over Ireland, but its power was largely confined to a fortified area around Dublin known as the Pale. Beyond this lay the great unruly expanse of Gaelic Ireland, a patchwork of independent lordships and clans, each with its own chief, its own laws and its own ancient rivalries. These clans were fiercely independent, their loyalties extending no further than their own kin. They were warriors and seafarers, and their culture was one of cattle raiding, poetry, and intricate systems of patronage and betrayal. The O'Malleys, Grace's clan, were lords of the sea. Their territory was the coastline of Clew Bay in modern-day County Mayo, and their power was measured not in acres of land, but in the number of galleys they could muster. They were the tax collectors of the ocean, demanding payment from any vessel that wished to fish in their waters or sail safely along their shores. They were, in the eyes of the English, little more than pirates, but in their own world, they were the rightful masters of their domain. It was into this world of maritime power and looming conflict that Grace was born, the only daughter of Chieftain Ewan Dubhdara O'Malley. From her earliest days, the sea was her inheritance. Legend has it that as a young girl, desperate to sail with her father on a trading expedition to Spain, she cut off her long hair to disguise herself as a boy, earning her the nickname Granuaile, which translates roughly to Bald Grace. While the story may be apocryphal, it captures the essence of her character, a defiant spirit that refused to be bound by the conventions of her gender. She learned to navigate by the stars, to handle a ship in a gale, and to understand the complex politics of the coastal clans. Her education was not in a convent but on the deck of a galley, a schooling in wave and wind that would prove far more valuable than any book learning. While noblewomen in England were being groomed for advantageous marriages, Grace O'Malley was being prepared for command. This preparation was put to the test when her father arranged her marriage to Donald O'Flaherty, the heir to a neighboring clan, a union designed to strengthen an alliance. Donald, known as Donald of the Battles, was a formidable warrior, but it was Grace who soon revealed the sharper strategic mind. When he was killed in a clan skirmish, instead of retreating into the passive role of a widow, Grace took command of his men and his castles. She rallied the O'Flaherty fighters and defended their stronghold of Cox Castle against an attacking force with such ferocity and cunning that the fort was renamed Caisleen na Circe, or Hen's Castle, in her honor. It was her first taste of independent power and she would not relinquish it. After O'Flaherty's death, Grace returned to O'Malley territory with her children and her growing fleet. She was a force to be reckoned with, a woman who controlled her own destiny. She soon entered into a second marriage, this time to Richard Burke, a man of immense wealth and land. The marriage contract itself speaks volumes about Grace's shrewdness. It included a famous trial marriage clause, stating that after 1 year, either party could dissolve the union. According to folklore, when the year was up, Grace stood atop the ramparts of Burke's castle, Rockfleet, and declared, "I dismiss you, Richard Burke," thus securing the fortress as her own. Whether entirely true or not, the story underscores her reputation for being ungovernable, even in marriage. From her base at Rockfleet, which still stands today, its stone walls lapped by the tide, Grace built her maritime empire. Her fleet of galleys, fast and maneuverable, ruled the coastline. She continued the O'Malley tradition of exacting tolls from shipping, but her ambitions grew. She launched raids on rival clans along the coast, even venturing as far as the walls of Galway city to plunder merchant vessels. Her exploits became the stuff of song and story. She was said to have given birth to her youngest son, Tibbet, on board her ship while being pursued by Turkish pirates. Just hours after the birth, when the pirates attempted to board her vessel, she allegedly rallied her crew, brandishing a musket and shouting, "Take this from an infidel's hand," leading the defense that drove the attackers away. She was, in every sense, a queen of the sea, her authority earned through courage, intelligence, and an unwavering will. But the world outside her coastal kingdom was changing rapidly. The English crown, under Queen Elizabeth I, was no longer content with a tentative hold on Ireland. The Tudor conquest was intensifying, and a new breed of English governor was being sent to subdue the Gaelic lords. The most formidable of these was Sir Richard Bingham, appointed governor of Connaught in 1584. Bingham was a ruthless and efficient soldier, a man who saw the Gaelic way of life as barbaric and the independent chieftains as traitors to be crushed. He imposed martial law, levied crippling taxes, and used terror as a weapon. For Grace O'Malley, Bingham was an existential threat. He saw her fleet as a challenge to English authority and her power as an affront. He captured her sons, murdered her lover, and seized her lands and cattle. He attempted to break her, both financially and spiritually. For the first time, Grace, now in her 50s, faced an enemy that could not be defeated by a raid at sea or a clan alliance. Her back was against the wall, her legacy and the survival of her family hanging in the balance. In this moment of extreme crisis, she made the most audacious decision of her life. She would not fight Bingham with his own methods of brute force on land, where he held the advantage. Instead, she would go over his head. She would appeal directly to the source of his power. She would sail to England and petition Queen Elizabeth I herself. The journey was perilous for a woman of her age, but Grace was undaunted. In 1593, her galley sailed up the River Thames, a strange and foreign vessel in the heart of England. The meeting that followed is one of the most extraordinary encounters in history. Two queens faced each other in the Palace of Greenwich. Elizabeth, the Virgin Queen, bedecked in silks and jewels, the ruler of a global empire, and Grace, the Pirate Queen, her clothes likely simple and practical, the ruler of a rocky coastline and a fleet of ships. They were separated by language, culture, and a vast gulf of power, yet they found a common tongue, Latin. Grace, we are told, refused to bow, as she did not acknowledge Elizabeth as her sovereign. What transpired was not a supplicant begging for mercy, but a negotiation between two powerful women. Grace presented her case with clarity and force. She was not a rebel, she argued, but a loyal subject who had been wronged by a corrupt and brutal official, Bingham. She detailed the injustices her family had suffered and made her demands: the release of her captured son and the restoration of her stolen property and income. She even offered her services and those of her galleys to the Queen, to defend Ireland against England's foreign enemies. It was a masterstroke of political theater and pragmatic diplomacy. Elizabeth, known for her own formidable intelligence, was clearly impressed. She saw in Grace a useful counterbalance to the ambitious Bingham. She granted Grace's requests, ordering the release of her son and providing her with a letter that effectively restored her status. The Pirate Queen had won. She had outmaneuvered her enemy not with a broadside, but with a well-argued petition. Grace O'Malley returned to Ireland and lived out her remaining years, continuing to lead her clan and command her ships until her death around 1603, the same year as Queen Elizabeth. But her victory was a temporary one. The tide of history was against the world she represented. The Gaelic order was in its final death throes, and within a generation, the flight of the earls would mark the final collapse of the old Irish aristocracy. The English conquest would be completed, and the story of independent figures like Grace O'Malley would be suppressed, relegated to local folklore. Yet her legend never died. It persisted in the songs and stories of the Irish people, a symbol of resistance and indomitable spirit. In the modern era, she has been reclaimed as a feminist icon, a figure of extraordinary agency in a time when women were afforded little. Her story is a powerful reminder that history is not merely the chronicle of kings and emperors who ruled vast inland empires, but also of those who mastered the liminal spaces, the coastlines and the seas. Grace O'Malley's throne was not made of stone and velvet, it was the deck of a ship, riding the wild waves of the Atlantic. She was a ruler who understood that true power lies not in the size of one's domain, but in the strength of one's will to defend it. And in that, she was the equal of any queen who ever lived.